6. The Steering Committee on the Implementation of the Building Bridges to a United Kenya Task Force report, the BBI Steering Committee has no legal capacity to initiate any action towards promoting constitutional changes under Article 257 of the Constitution.
All right, that is again Daniel Musinga, the President of the Court of Appeal, delivering that judgment on Friday. And Wakili Mutuma, it would appear that so much has happened since 2018 until now, and you see that the judges were clear that yes, the task force was not illegal. Also, the implementation task force that was, when was it formed? Was it 2021 January?
Yes, yes.
It was also not unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. And then again, people are wondering, how can an unconstitutional, a constitutional, an institution that is not unconstitutional, how can it end up at an unconstitutional process? Maybe how do you trace that breaking point, even as the judges talk about the questions of public participation, the questions of what IBC needed to have done to be in a position to verify and even guide the collection of signatures? Where do you point at the breaking point that made this process all illegal?
Thank you, Sam. I participated in that case where Justice Mativo said the president had all the right to, establish a task force to advise him on policy and administrative issues. We agreed with that judgment almost 100%. But my clients then, Third Alliance, were apprehensive that this is not about policy and administrative recommendations. The president is actually up to something bigger. Only that, things were not very clear then. Mm-hmm. And the judge could not find anything to make him deliver a different judgment. But then later, the president, after receiving the recommendations, ought to have taken a different journey. What do I say? It is okay for the president to establish a task force on any issue, including advice on constitutional changes. Mm-hmm. But then he has no mandate to proceed and commence a process of constitutional change, because number one, he's not a legislator, mm-hmm, as envisaged under Article 256, because that is a parliamentary initiative. He's also not a common Wanjiko who is supposed to initiate a constitutional change through Article 257. So it is okay, because judges are saying the president, you had every right to ask for advice, for recommendation. But then what were you supposed to do after you received those recommendations? You could not have proceeded and then began a process of amending a constitution, because that is not within your mandate. It is not part of the reasons why you were elected into office. Remember, the president, unlike many of us, swears by the constitution. Mm-hmm. And he must live by the constitution. And one of the terms of the oath of office is that I will defend and preserve. That's a very strong word, preserve, meaning you have to keep and maintain it in the same form, mm-hmm, you found it. We do not swear by the constitution, the rest of us. So for him, he doesn't have that chance to amend a constitution, because he will be going against the very oath of office. Which is fine,
because you said that he could have received the report but not necessarily gone to the... what else was he to do? If there are certain suggestions that you need to amend certain clauses of the constitution or different clauses, what was he to do with such information?
Thank you very much. This is what I think the president ought to have done. Involve other stakeholders, like, for example, the committee that is chaired by my brother, Honorable Kioni. Let us do a stock taking of our constitution. One of them would be to take the report that has been, the recommendations from BBI, involve stakeholders like Law Society of Kenya, parliamentary committees. Let us now interrogate the constitution. Let us try to understand whether really there is need for us to amend the constitution. So the president would be saying, I have a report here. People have gone through throughout the country. They have come up with these recommendations. What do you think? LSK will come and say, we have received judgments from the High Court since 2010 on interpretation and implementation of this constitution. We think that clause A, B, C needs to be looked at. So then we begin that conversation. That is the role of a president. Then you would create what would be a proper constitutional moment, rather than him standing on a podium and telling us that it is now a constitutional moment. That would have been generated, mm-hmm, from the reports, from stakeholders like LSK, from parliamentary initiatives. We would then have that conversation.
All right.
But not him seeming to bulldoze the process as an executive.
All right, and we'll get back to the conversation about the constitutional moment later on, but karibu sana Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, the Member of Parliament for Ndaragwa constituency.
My apology for coming in late. I woke up late.
Oh.
No, I woke up early, I left late. But just because I started working too early in my house.
Okay, apologies accepted, but we've been talking about the impact of the judgment of the Building Bridges initiative, and for you, because you've not had the opportunity, at least on Citizen TV's Daybreak, to comment about this. So the judges said the president has no role to initiate constitutional changes. IBC was stopped from ever acting on the Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2020. When you look at that judgment, first of all, are you comfortable with it? But secondly, what do you think could have been done differently to achieve different results for a process that would appear in March 2018 was off to a good cause?
Again, my apologies for having come in late. This is a very difficult time for this country. We left 2010 all the way to 2022 or 2017 or 2018, whatever date you want to pick, with one of the most transformative constitutions that is celebrated almost all over the world. Everybody wants to read our constitution and copy it and use it. And I think, given what I am seeing, we are likely to end up with the most retrogressive constitution, courtesy of what is happening around. And it is for that reason that I really want this to go to the Supreme Court. And I'm happy with the judgment that was delivered. We celebrate the judges who did it, they exercised their mind on it, but we really want the Supreme Court to look into issues. And they have to look at those issues without having Raila in mind, without having Ruto in mind, without having Uhuru in mind. They must give Kenyans back the country. As we are today, with those judgments the way they are, we are losing this country slowly, courtesy of the judiciary. And I really want, and we can say what we think about, and the only thing that will make sense is this matter before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court must get back to understand when we talked about the sovereign will of the people, what did it mean? When we talked about the popular initiative, what is this? And they must completely remove themselves from any political persuasion. They must give us back the constitution we had, because it was taken away by the High Court and the Court of Appeal. And I am saying this because what we now have is a case where we can easily land in a crisis. You see that this popular initiative cannot be initiated by anybody else other than Wajiko. And then and even the Wajiko you say must initiate it. Imagine the cost that is required, the amount of money that you must pay to get that popular initiative started. I wish I came earlier. I don't have time to say all these things, but I'll just leave them as statements. And tell me whether Wajiko will ever be able to initiate that process. To me, it's done deal. Then we have the thing they call the basic structure. And they are not able to tell us what is a basic structure, but they say they will be able to tell us from time to time on a case-to-case basis. So we can always, anytime we want to amend the constitution, we must go to court and get them to tell us whether this is part of the basic structure. Even as in Parliament, as per that judgment, there is no initiative that we can undertake without us ending up in the court. So we have lost it. And if the Supreme Court does not give it back to us, I dare say this country is being lost to another person, another thing, I don't want to say, that is not within us now. When you come and say, and I hear my colleagues here talking about it, that the president's had, and he is required to do to make sure that we have national unity, but he cannot do it. He cannot he cannot initiate anything that brings us together as a nation. If he does it, it is X, Y, and Z. And where did this whole thing start? It started because Uhuru is being viewed that he's supporting Raila, or he is fighting Uhuru, or he's fighting Ruto. Remove the actors on the table, look at the constitution, look at the country. Where are we? If we continue with this route, and if this judgment is not removed from where we are slowly walking into a path which I have seen other countries walk through, where you eventually end up with the army.
Mheshimiwa, but when you reflect on the judgment and your reading of the Constitution, who do you think would start off a popular initiative, and how?
A popular initiative will be started by a Kenyan. It will be started by the Wajiko. And that Wajiko will actually have to be helped the same way, I believe the same way he was helped by the executive, by the members of parliament, by another. If you want Wajiko, my mother, 99-year-old, to start a popular initiative, how is she going to start it? Because she is the Wajiko. How is she going to start it? Mm-hmm. And don't think of another Wajiko. I am looking at my 95-year-old mother. She is a Wajiko. Tell me how she is going to start it with this judgment that we have on the table. Where is she going to get the money to print, to do the civic education that was required to be done by the court? Where is she going to get the money to print the 47 million copies that must be given to every Kenyan because they need to do that popular initiative? That is the public participation that we are having. We need a proper thing from the Supreme Court, and we need soberness. Now let me say this. Mm-hmm. I want to say this as a person who did law a little later in the day. I like it. I didn't do law to go and practice it in court. But any lawyer, now... And
he was my student.
Yes, and I want to say this. Okay. Any person who does law and remains with a degree of law must be very careful. If you are just reading the law to us, you need to do other courses. It opens you up to the world. This is not a world for lawyers. It is not a question of reading the black letter. If it's just the black letter, we are doomed. Mm-hmm. In fact, we have to be careful with who we promote to hold these positions of judging judgments. Mm-hmm. We must make sure that there are people who are global. Because what we have lost ourselves to just the black letter of what is the law saying. But we are not saying, how is it that we mold this country together? Mm-hmm. I was one of the people who was very happy with the constitution we have. But when we are told, like now we are told, there is no quorum for IBC. The same IBC...
But only one judge said that.
I listened to them, and there are many. The same, even if it's one judge, it is one of the decisions that ended up on telling us what to do. Why is it that the whole process was thrown away? Because IBC did not have quorum to verify the signatures. Mm-hmm. IBC did not even have quorum to elect the president of the Supreme Court and of the Court of Appeal. IBC should not have had quorum to elect the president of the Royal Society of Kenya. IBC does not have quorum to even prepare for elections 2022. So we actually don't even have these elections 2022 coming. Because all that they have done must be put away.
That was not a majority decision. I think you need to correct yourself on that.
No.
Just hold on. Let me just pull out what
it was not a majority decision, so that's misleading us.
No. Well,
No, it's okay. We will verify the facts. But that's the point I actually want us to discuss, Honorable Boss, because if the court says that the IEBC did not have the capacity to verify signatures, did not have capacity to even come up with the administrative functions, policies on how to verify signatures, how much more does this mean for an IEBC that is already preparing for elections 2022?
Yeah, as a lawyer, I won't actually take into account that decision that was by a dissenting judge. What the decision of the court will be what the majority decided. Mm-hmm. So we cannot go into a conversation that is what the court said. It was a dissenting decision. So it is not a decision of the court. That's what we must decide. And just to speak to what Honorable Kioni says, is that he says that he's worried that his 95-year-old mother might not be able to institute constitutional change. Mm-hmm. But I want to tell him this.
Yeah, it is.
The way constitutional change...
You have made a mistake. It is there. The independent commission was held to have had no quorum.
Okay, let me just read it for you, and for the sake of the viewer. It is number 13, the administrative procedures for the verification of signatures in support of the Constitution Amendment referendum made by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission are illegal, null and void because they were made without quorum and in violation of Section 5, 6, and 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013, Sichale J.A. dissenting. So it is the position that carried the day. As you reflect on that, Advocate Mutuma.
No, I think I haven't had a chance to speak on this.
I'll get back to you. Let me just circulate it to Advocate Mutuma. So how much of an impact will this decision, this finding, on IEBC-B, and I'm specific on what was gazetted by IEBC on the 9th of August to be the spending limits for the campaigns of 2022, but also some work that has been done, the preparatory work for elections next year.
I think it opens a lot of doors for scrutiny of all the activities, we have to be honest, that have been undertaken by IEBC. Because once the court pronounces that IEBC did not have the quorum and mandate to do Act A, then you cannot say that then they had the capacity to do a different thing altogether. But then, why are we even having this conversation, Sam, about quorum?
It.
Yes, they did that. But then why are we having this discussion about quorum? When you look at the IEBC Act, it requires the president to gazette vacancies within 7 days from the date they fall vacant. Now, it's been 3 years. The people who came to court to tell us that IEBC had the quorum was the AG, a person who is supposed to advise the president to do that which he must do. It was IEBC that came to court to tell us that we are okay with the way we are, allow us do what we must do. But then they had the opportunity to move to the same court for orders of mandamus to compel the president to gazette the vacancy, to compel parliament to do what it must do. And this is what my brother, Honorable Kioni, and his team should have been doing, rather than sitting, because we are paying them to do exactly that, rectify the situation. Other than us going through the first judgment by Honorable Chacha Mwita, going through another judgment by Honorable Okwani, going to the High Court, going to the Court of Appeal, talking about quorum when it is as simple as just gazetting the vacancies and replacing. So why then should we create a crisis and then we want to depend, or rather rely on the same crisis that we have created? It's not fair.
Look, you may say that with the benefit of hindsight, but Honorable Boss, let me get back to you now. I mean, there has been so much controversy around IEBC. I believe that the vetting of the nominees should be happening this week. But also, we've had some members of parliament from ODM saying that it's time for Chebukati to leave. So this environment, at a time that the judges have said you did not have quorum to undertake an exercise of verification of signatures, yet so much work you're doing, what are you setting ourselves up for?
No, I think what we need to do is, you know, you cannot pick and choose the judgment when you look at it. What you need to do when you look at the judgment, you actually have to make a table and say, this is what each of the judges said on each of these points. And then do a calculation and come up with what the final decision of the court. That's why we extract orders after a judgment. So the judgment explains.
Yeah. The only person who dissented on that issue was Sichare.
No.
I have idea.
No, but you see, you don't, that's what I'm saying, you know, when you study law and you study a judgment, the way you should do it is, at the end of the day, the reason why when after a reading of a judgment, the court actually tells you, you go and extract the judgment, which means you come up with what the bottom line decision of the court was. So when you look at this decision, and let's wait for the orders to be extracted, then you will be able to see that actually on that issue of IEBC, the court distinguished it. They said IEBC did not have quorum, but they went on to say that, but actually they could do the following things. So you need to actually go and read back and come up with the order.
I'm just wondering, I am not a lawyer.
So unfortunately, I don't talk on the top of my mind when I look at a judgment. I look at what will be extracted. And I think counsel here knows that.
Let me just cement.
So you look at what the court is
just clarify that point, because I have read the judgment and
Okay.
I was in court when it was delivered.
But,
so the dispute was only in respect to the BBI Constitution Amendment Bill.
Yes, it did
the
not talk about...
was only in respect of the conduct of IEBC in as far as the amendment of the Constitution is concerned.
Yeah, but
I
then
said that that might open doors to scrutiny
how
of
do you,
other
how
decisions.
do you say you
No,
have,
the determination was only for the purposes
that's fine, advocate.
Let me say this. How do you say you have quorum to do her work, but you have no quorum to do my work?
That's a
I'm
very
now talking
simplistic,
as an, yes,
it's
it
a
must
very
be that
simplistic.
simple for Kenyans. And that's what I'm saying. If we just done law alone, you are really the wrong person to talk to us as Kenyans. Because this has nothing to do with law. We are talking about a country. What you said is correct. Assuming we all failed, including myself as the chairman of CIOC, to set the record straight. What is the work of the court? To set us to fail or to get us back on road? What they have done is to set us to fail. I have failed, and I am agreeing, not because you are right, but I'm saying I didn't do what I'm supposed to have done. The president did do what he's supposed to have done. Now the court has told us where to go, and where to go is to hell. That's wrong. That is why I'm saying we slept with a very transformative constitution, waking up with a very progressive position. Okay. And as people, this has nothing to do with lawyers. For heaven's sake, this country is not for lawyers. I am a lawyer, and we are making the biggest mistake. This is a question of where do we want the country to be? Do we want a Kenya tomorrow? And where we are headed, my brother, it is not a good road. This is not a good superhighway.
Right, and I want us to listen to what the judges specifically said so that we can have this conversation from then on. Of course, they were speaking about what IEBC conducted being the verification. Just listen to the judges themselves.
The administrative procedures for the verification of signatures in support of the Constitution Amendment referendum made by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission are illegal, null and void, because they were made without quorum and in violation of sections 5, 6, and 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act 2013. Sichale J.
He is the only one who dissented.
And so, Honorable Boss, I know you said that you don't comment on top of mind, but for the sake of Kenyans to understand what really this means, what do we need to do? Because already, if the IEBC, there were just 3 commissioners, they received signatures, more than 4 million. They verified them within a very short time, gave a report that it has met the threshold. Then they concluded the process, they gazetted and said, they published on their website and said, if your name is on the list and should not have been, you can report within a duration of time. Already, there are actions IEBC has undertaken. What do we do, even as we wait for the appointment of new commissioners, to make sure that we can avoid what we have gone through with BBI and a referendum that is not time-bound, but a constitution which is time-bound?
Okay, first of all, let me say this, and I think they both will understand this because they are both lawyers. You know, the question that you're asking us, you're telling us to cherry-pick a section of the judgment. The reading of a judgment is not as simplistic as that. The reading of a judgment, what you must do is say, first look what was the question brought before the court. Then once you look at the question, you look at what the court answered. Because the question that you're asking me is not necessarily what question was before the court and the court answered. Like Councillor said, is that the court was only speaking to the legality of IEBC in respect to the question that was presented before the court. So,
is there any threat that you see?
No. The thing is, I would be very wrong to be able to say this is what the court said on that point in the way that you want to look at it.
And Kenyans are looking upon readers to guide them and help them move on.
And we're going to do that.
They have no time to wait for those extraction of orders. Kenyans today want to know what kind of a country have we woken up to today.
Okay, hold
this
on.
morning.
No,
so
let me explain. Let me
explain. I know how well you used to prepare for you to lecture us and tell us when you have passed and when you have failed. Okay. But we are now here talking to my mother, 95-year-old. She's asking, where is Kenya, the one I fought for in the 50s?
Okay, Chair, let me speak to you on this. Let me tell you something. You want Kenyans to know what has happened? What has happened is BBI is dead. BBI was an illegality. Bottom line, that's what the court has said. BBI is not going to be the process in which we can change our constitution. The court has told us the manner in which we must change our constitution is that we must involve Kenyans.
And how I wish they only said that.
No, let me finish. And then, remember, we are not saying that an ordinary citizen can't make constitutional change. Remember how in constitutions are normally changed is that there is a clamor from the ground. People begin to talk about it. There's discussions and deliberations. Then, even your mother will be discussing. She'll go to her church. She'll talk to her women's meeting.
The church is already gone.
Yes, and they begin to discuss about the conversation about the changes of the constitution. Then we have civil society. Civil society gets involved, and civil society then picks it up, and that's how it goes. So it's not like, you don't make it look like an
Civil
individual.
society
If you
funded
look
by
at our
foreign
current,
money, the foreign dollar,
Even-
to change our own constitution.
the
Constitution.
The change of our constitution, the current constitution that we have now,
Right.
it took 20 years. And it took Kenyans who are talking about it everywhere on the street. And then it got picked up by civil society.
Right.
And then they were able to bring the case before the courts.
Okay, all right. And Advocate
Let me
Mutuma,
just- I know you are going to Mutuma, but he has given me his opportunity. And say
How do you
this.
know
Now, we have lost the BBI, and that's not my issue.
okay.
In fact, to hell with BBI, I'm interested with the judgment and the content of BBI. And I'm saying remove Uhuru, Ruto, Raila, Kibaki, Kioni into this. I'm looking at the country.
They were not involved.
Clearly, they were. That is what took us to court. But what we left with is not Raila, Uhuru, Ruto. And we
was
left
not
with
Uhuru and
another
Raila who were
document.
involved.
We left with a
Just
document
allow
that
him
is
to
very
finish.
dangerous. We are being told IBC has no quorum to do what is good for her. But it has quorum to do what is good for me. That is the bottom line.
Okay.
And I want to tell you, today, tomorrow, there will be people in court saying, if IBC did not have quorum to verify signatures, then it had no quorum to conduct by-elections in this country. Because this judgment goes back and said from 2018. And remember, we were told by a judge from the same court, Okwani, Justice Okwani, and that was delivered on the case number 212 of 2018, that yes, I agree IBC has quorum to conduct its business, other than on issues of meeting. So we've been doing what we've been doing in the country on the strength of a judgment that was given from the same court. The same courts that have now come to say, by the way, you don't have a quorum. That's what I'm saying. Where have we been left as a country? This has nothing to do with the extraction of decrees and the rest. It is a question of where is this country?
Right.
Who is it? Where? And the Supreme Court must come
Okay.
to give back Kenya to Kenyans.
All right, and Advocate Mutuma, as you exit from this, Eric Nyamoye is saying someone needs to get I just missed it, clarification on whether IBC had the mandate, I got it, get clarification if all by-elections conducted by IEBC are valid, given that the commission didn't have quorum. And because you have explained the genesis of the problem why we have fewer commissioners than we should, but the judges in different versions, I mean different judgments of the different judges, they were saying that the quorum can not be less than at least 4, being more than half of the commission as stipulated in the IEBC Act, being 7. So for us to avoid a situation the BBI process finds itself in when it comes to the election of 2022, what do we need to fix or to regularize even with the coming in of new commissioners?
Well, number one, people have been mistaking between the composition of IBC and the quorum of IBC. The composition of IBC is 7 members. At all times, that has never changed. So then it means that quorum, because quorum is usually established for a purpose, is to have at least half the number attending a meeting so that they can be able to make, proper decisions. So the judges said it is very unfair to expect that you will have less than half the composition and then still continue to purport that you have quorum. Now, to answer your question directly, once we have the new members on board, they can easily ratify the decisions that were made without quorum. It is a principle known in law that a decision could have been made by people without capacity to do it, but once we have the rest come on board, they can easily ratify that decision and becomes binding.
Even when such decisions have timelines, like the spending limits that has to be gazetted at least of months to election.
But that's an issue that, again, that is in dispute before the parliamentary committee. I don't think the issue of gazettement even has sailed through as we speak. But then it is possible for the new commissioners to come and ratify. And to answer your other question, the Court of Appeal and the High Court have not pronounced themselves on other actions that were undertaken by IBC, simply because there was no dispute to be arbitrated by the court in respect of other matters. If there is any Kenyan out there who feels aggrieved by the actions of IBC based on quorum, they will have to move the court, and the court will have to interrogate facts and the law based on what is produced in court, then it will be able to make a determination on whether any other specific action was legal or illegal. But as of now, the illegality is in respect to matters BBI.
All right.
Would they be guided by a decision of the Court of Appeal?
They will be guided by the decision of the High Court.
Oh, yeah.
But then, again, my brother seems to bank so much on the Supreme Court. I do not think the Supreme Court will change a bit.
That's okay.
Because
saying,
Sam, you have 11 judges so far that have agreed that BBI was unconstitutional. It was illegal. You do not expect 7 judges of the Supreme Court to depart from
But it's
that.
not an impossibility.
It is not an impossibility.
You know what the former Chief Justice said? If politicians bring a skunk to you as a judiciary, throw it back. These judges are playing around with a skunk. They should have thrown it back to the politicians. The skunk is messing the judiciary. It is not that I believe the Supreme Court would do something, but at least what the Court of Appeal did, one of the things it did is that it removed the decision that was already arrived at by the High Court that we must impeach Uhuru. Look at that decision that was given to us by the High Court. He is impeachable. In fact, if we had numbers, if the people who have always wanted to impeach Uhuru had numbers, would easily have started the motion of impeaching the president. The same court have told us, this court, this parliament that we are now looking upon to give us the commissioners is unconstitutional. Uhuru is holding on the letter to disband it. If Uhuru disbards the parliament today, and the courts have also said the IBC has no quorum, so where do we go as a country?
Okay.
You know,
all right. I want us to, no, Honorable Boss, I want us to take a short break. Honorable Kioni is referring to one of the orders that was set aside by the Court of Appeal, including that President Uhuru Kenyatta has contravened Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and specifically Article 73, Sub-Article 1A and I, or AI, by initiating and promoting a constitutional change process contrary to the provisions of the Constitution on amendment of the Constitution. So that was thrown away or set aside by the Court of Appeal. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll be speaking about what had been said to be a constitutional moment, but you're now calling it Kenya's constitutional moment to understand the import of this moving forward, despite the challenges that may have been termed to exist in the country. After the break.